Hi, I'm Shanann. My parents passed away and left everything to me because I stayed. But the day I walked into court to defend that truth, my brother and his wife were already sitting there, smiling like they earned it. They hadn't visited Mom once while she was dying. But somehow they forged her will, sold her things, erased me from my own mother's goodbye. And when the judge looked up and said, "Wait, you're her?" That's when I realized they built their entire lie on the belief I'd never fight back. But they had no idea who I'd become. Before we dive in, tell me, where are you listening from tonight? What would you do if your own family tried to bury you right after the funeral? Because this isn't just my story. It might be yours too. Pa. The morning air in Houston carried that heavy kind of silence only funerals seem to know. The church doors were half open, the smell of lilies fighting against the faint scent of rain that had passed before dawn. I parked at the far end of the gravel lot, the only car there besides the hearse. Inside, a row of chairs near the front had crisp white cards taped to them. Reserved for family. None were taken. I stood there for a long minute, the bouquet in my hand drooping a little from the humidity. My fingers brushed against one of the cards. The ink bled slightly from the moisture, but the word family still looked too bold for what it meant now. I whispered to myself, almost a breath, I guess that doesn't include me. Instead of sitting near the front, I slipped quietly into the back pew. The organ began to hum low, and the room filled with soft shuffling as neighbors trickled in, mostly people who had known my mother from church, the grocery store, or the years she'd spent volunteering at the hospice. Not one of them was blood. When the priest began the service, I realized I was the only one of her children there. For a second, I thought maybe they hadn't heard she passed. But that was impossible. Darlie was on Facebook the day after Mom died, posting a Bible verse about family coming together in hard times. I sat there, staring at that row of empty chairs, and all I could think about was how full our house used to be before silence took over. Years ago, my brother Lyle stopped calling after I refused to co-sign his second mortgage. "It's family," he'd said back then. "Family helps family." And I remember answering, "Family doesn't ask someone to drown with them." That was the last real conversation we had. After that, Darlie called once, just once, to tell me, "You've always been a little too sure of yourself, Shanann. Family should know their place." I never called back. Life got smaller after that. My apartment stayed quiet. My work as a financial analyst became routine. Numbers, charts, reports, silence. Birthdays came and went without phone calls. Thanksgiving invitations stopped. Even the occasional "Merry Christmas" text disappeared. And then one day, Mom got sick. I took her to every appointment, signed the insurance paperwork, argued with the pharmacy when they doubled her copay. Darlie sent flowers once, a week late, with a typed card that said, "Thinking of you during this difficult time." I threw the card away but kept the vase. By the time Mom slipped away, she could barely speak, but she held my hand and mouthed something that I understood even without sound. "You stayed." That was enough for me. I didn't need anyone else to see it. The sound of gravel crunching outside pulled me back to the present. Through the stained glass window, I saw a black Mercedes glide into the lot. It was nearly halfway through the ceremony when they entered. Lyle first, in a pressed suit that still had the store creases. Then Darlie, her heels clicking like they owned the floor. Her perfume arrived before she did, something sharp and expensive. She glanced around, pretending to look for a seat, then said loud enough for the front pews to hear, "I almost forgot Mom had another child." A few heads turned my way. My throat tightened, but I didn't give her what she wanted. I stood up quietly, walked down the side aisle, and stepped out into the hall before the eulogy began. Outside, the air hit cold. I stayed near the door, listening to the muffled sound of hymns leaking from inside. My palms were damp from holding the bouquet too tight. When the service ended, people passed me with polite nods, murmuring, "So sorry for your loss," like we were all rehearsing the same line. Lyle and Darley lingered by the hearse, posing sympathy for the neighbors. Not once did either of them meet my eye. After the burial, when the last handful of dirt hit the coffin, Mom's lawyer, Mr. Garrison, walked up to me. A short man with kind eyes and a briefcase that looked heavier than it should. "Your mother left something for you," he said, handing me an envelope. The paper was thick, sealed with her handwriting on the front. For Shanann. Inside was her will. Every asset, the house, the land, the trust, was left to me. In the margin, written in her uneven script, were two simple words: she stayed. I don't know why that broke me more than the funeral itself. I pressed the paper against my chest for a moment, then folded it carefully and slipped it inside my coat pocket. My hands wouldn't stop trembling. Behind me, I heard Darley's laughter, low, polished, and cruelly casual. Some people can't let go, can they? I turned slightly, enough to see her watching me with that smile that never touched her eyes. Lyle stood beside her, looking somewhere over my shoulder, avoiding everything. I didn't speak. There was nothing worth saying. Mrs. Kowalski, our old neighbor, shuffled over, her hand gripping a cane tighter than it needed to. Her gray coat fluttered in the wind. "Your mother talked about you every day," she whispered. "Said you were the only one who ever came back. Don't let them take that away from you." Her words felt half like comfort, half like a warning. "I won't," I said softly, though I wasn't entirely sure what she meant. But as she walked away, I caught Darley watching us again. The look on her face wasn't grief. It was calculation, the kind of look someone gives when they're adding numbers in their head, numbers that don't belong to them. When everyone had left, I went back to the church hall to collect the leftover flowers. The reserved for family chair still stood there, perfectly untouched. A single rose petal had fallen onto the seat. I brushed it away and whispered, "Maybe it's still waiting for someone who remembers what family means." The wind pushed through the door, scattering petals across the floor. I stepped outside, the sky already shifting from gray to dusk. As I walked past the parking lot, I caught a glimpse of Darley in the car mirror, her lips curled in that same knowing smirk. The kind that said trouble wasn't over, not by a long shot. That smirk from the funeral wouldn't leave my mind. It followed me like a bad shadow all week, through my office, the grocery store, even the quiet hum of the washing machine late at night. I should have known it wasn't just arrogance, it was warning. 7 days later, I found the envelope taped to my front door. Thick, official, sealed with the court's emblem. The words, "Notice of Civil Claim," sat dead center, heavy and cold. I stood there for a moment, mail key still in my hand, the hum of traffic from the street behind me fading into nothing. I opened it right there on the porch. The paper crackled like it wanted to make sure I heard every word. My brother and his wife were suing me, contesting Mom's will. Undue influence, the document said. They claimed I had manipulated our mother into leaving everything to me, that she wasn't of sound mind, that I'd isolated her from the rest of the family. I read it twice, just to let the absurdity sink in. My hands shook, but not from fear, from anger so still it felt surgical. Inside, my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. Nothing personal, just business. No name, but I didn't need one. Darley had a signature kind of cruelty, polite, polished, like poison wrapped in lace. That night, I couldn't sleep. The ceiling fan spun slow circles, the light from the street lamp cutting stripes across the wall. I went to the closet and pulled out the box where I'd kept Mom's papers. The hospice bills, her handwriting on every check, the hospital logs with my initials scrawled on each line. Proof of presence, proof of care, proof of love. I remembered the way Mom used to hold the pen, slow, careful, like every word mattered. Her handwriting was steady. That's all the proof I needed, not for them, but for me. Still, I knew I had to fight. Not for money, not for property. But because some things, if you let them lie, they rot everything they touch. The next morning, I took the lawsuit to my lawyer, a quiet man named Harris. His office sat above a bakery that always smelled like cinnamon and burnt sugar. He read every page, silent the entire time. When he finally looked up, he said, "They're playing ugly, Shanann. This kind of claim, undue influence, is meant to smear your name, not win." "I know," I said. He leaned back. "You want to settle?" I laughed once, short, sharp. They settled with me the day they stopped showing up for her. I'm not settling again. Harris smiled a little. "Then we fight, but you'll need evidence, logs, witnesses, anything that proves your mother made those choices on her own." "I have all of that," I said. "Every line of it." He nodded, impressed, maybe a little surprised. Most people in my position were too broken to be this organized. But grief and anger can build structure if you let them. By the weekend, the papers had made their way around town. A neighbor mentioned she'd seen Lyle at the diner talking loudly about his sister taking advantage of their sick mother. I didn't react. People who gossip like that don't want truth. They want theater. And I wasn't about to audition. Still, I felt the sting. Every whisper chipped at the memory of who Mom really was. A woman with her own will, her own words, her own stubborn kindness. I started keeping a journal, logging everything that happened since her death. Dates, calls, encounters, messages. A timeline of betrayal, neat and documented. Not because I thought I'd forget, but because one day they'd twist it. And I wanted my version to exist first. One afternoon, while sorting through Mom's files, I found something I'd missed before, an envelope tucked behind her medical directives. Inside was a short note in her familiar blue ink. "If they ever make you feel small, remember this: you stayed." The words hit harder than the will itself. Not because they gave me strength, but because they reminded me what I was fighting for. Not land, not houses, not numbers in an account. Dignity. I placed the note back into the same envelope that once carried the will and sat there for a long time. Outside, the wind was picking up. A storm was moving in, one of those thick Texas rains that makes everything smell like iron and asphalt. Sunday night, just as the sky cracked open, the doorbell rang. I opened the door to see a courier, drenched from the downpour, holding another letter. "Sorry, ma'am," he said, handing it over. "Had to deliver this one personally." It was from the courthouse, official, final. The trial date was set for 3 weeks from now. 3 weeks. That's how long I had to turn grief into strategy. I folded the paper neatly, placed it inside the same envelope where Mom's note rested, and whispered to the empty room, "Let them come." The rain slowed by midnight. I stood by the window, watching the streetlights reflect off puddles, and thought about Darlie's smirk. It wasn't confidence, it was certainty. The kind of look people wear when they believe they've already won. They had no idea who I'd become. That smirk, the one from the funeral, was now sitting across from me, confident she'd already won. Her legs were crossed, her nails perfect, navy blazer crisp. Darlie didn't even look nervous. She looked rehearsed. The courtroom smelled like polished wood and overbrewed coffee. Even the silence had its own rhythm, the kind that made every sound feel like a pin dropped in an empty church. I walked in behind Evelyn, my attorney, clutching a neat stack of documents I'd organized myself. Not because I didn't trust Evelyn, but because when you've been underestimated for most of your life, you learn to come prepared. Lyle barely looked at me. That part didn't sting, not anymore. But Darlie leaned in toward him and whispered, loud enough for the first 2 rows to hear, "Oh, she's actually here." I didn't flinch. I took the seat beside Evelyn and slid the papers onto the desk. A judge's bench towered above us. Judge Nolan, early 60s, weathered face, unreadable eyes. The kind of man who'd seen every shade of family fallout and didn't care for theater. Court came to order with the kind of calm that feels like a blade before it cuts. The opposing attorney, Bailey, stood first. His voice carried a well-practiced concern. "Your Honor, my clients are not here to argue. They are here to seek fairness. A mother's love should not be measured by lines in a will." Evelyn didn't blink. She just uncapped her pen. Bailey gestured toward Darlie, who wore the expression of someone at a funeral. Not Mom's, of course, but one she imagined attending. Mrs. Hawthorne was in a vulnerable state, isolated, misled. My clients were removed from her life, from her heart. I bit the inside of my cheek to stay still. Evelyn rose when it was her turn. Her voice was cold steel. "Respectfully, Your Honor, love is shown in presence, not promises. The deceased lived with my client. She was cared for, not coerced. And we have the logs, the signatures, the history." Then she walked to the exhibit table and placed down a set of files. Every one of Mom's medical logs, each signed by her own hand, dated, organized. That alone would have held weight. But Evelyn wasn't done. "There was an early draft of Mrs. Hawthorne's will," she said, her voice quiet, like she was about to let the room in on a secret. "In that version, Mrs. Darlie Hawthorne was listed as a partial beneficiary." Gasps stirred like wind across a field. I stayed still. Evelyn waited until the murmurs faded. "And then," she continued, "that name was crossed out, by hand and initialed." She held up the document. "By the deceased." Judge Nolan leaned forward. "Is that handwriting verified?" "Yes, Your Honor. We'll be presenting analysis from 2 separate handwriting experts during this trial." Darlie's face didn't move, but the air around her changed. It wasn't panic, not yet, but something stiffer, less. "Sure." The judge nodded once, slowly. "Proceed." A break was called, and I found myself staring out a courthouse window as drizzle began to tap against the glass. Houston rain never came quietly. It crept in, then poured like it had something to prove. That sound brought me back to the night it all cracked. It was nearly 4 years ago. Lyle had come over in a storm like this one. Darlie wasn't far behind him. Their shoes tracked mud across my entryway. But I said nothing. I just listened as he explained his latest financial mess. Credit cards, gambling. He never said the word, but I could see it in his eyes. He asked me for $20,000. Darlie didn't ask. She demanded. "You've got access to Mom's finances. She's just sitting there in that house. You could take care of this in an afternoon." I said no, and not quietly. "Mom's money isn't oxygen," I told them. "You'll survive." Darlie had laughed, but not the kind that held humor. "You'll regret that," she said, coldly. "You think you're better than us, just because you stayed behind?" That night echoed now, like it had never ended. Maybe it hadn't. Court resumed by late morning. I felt steadier, but I wasn't ready for what came next. Bailey approached the judge with another document. "Your Honor," he began, "we've recently obtained a statement believed to be written by the deceased, a letter expressing confusion and second thoughts about her estate plans." Evelyn stood before he finished. "We request to examine the document." The judge agreed. The bailiff brought it over. Evelyn opened it beside me. It was typed. Too clean. Too perfect. She narrowed her eyes. "This font," she whispered, "didn't exist when your mother passed. It was created after." I didn't know that kind of detail could matter, but Evelyn did. "We'll need a forensic document examiner," she said aloud, stepping forward. "There's no record of this letter anywhere in the deceased's files, medical logs, or her computer backups. And the font. This version of Times Roman was only added to common word processors 2 years ago." The room tensed. Even Judge Nolan seemed to sit back slightly. Bailey looked uncomfortable for the first time. Evelyn didn't push too hard. "We're not accusing, yet, but we do request a verification process. If this is authentic, it deserves scrutiny, and if it's not—" She let the words trail. The judge looked directly at me. "Ms. Hawthorne, you maintained your mother's logs?" "Yes, Your Honor." "Daily?" "She asked me to," I said. "Every evening." He paused, a moment too long, then gave the briefest nod. Not approval, but something quieter. Recognition. Court adjourned for the day. I stayed in my seat for a moment, collecting the files, tucking Mom's handwriting back where it belonged. When I looked up, Darlie wasn't smirking anymore. She was staring, not at me, through me, planning something. Back at home that evening, I was about to shut off the porch light when my phone buzzed with a voicemail. Unknown number, but I knew. I hit play. "You think this is about money?" Darlie's voice, calm, flat. "It's about making you nothing again. No click, no sound, just that." I played it twice, then saved it under the label Evidence. I didn't cry, I didn't curse, I just stared out at the dark and whispered to myself, "Let's see how long you can stay smiling." It was past midnight when the hush in my apartment felt louder than the rain tapping at the window. I sat on the arm of the sofa, legs tucked under me, the voicemails still playing in my mind. It's about making you nothing again. Each replay drained the air out of the room, like someone slowly letting go of a balloon. I dragged a deep breath, turned off the TV, and listened to the hum of the air conditioner. It was too quiet, too calm. Yet in that quiet, I found something sharp, a thought, not fear. "They're scared. That's why they're loud." I said it to myself, aloud, just before the clock ticked 12:30. The room was still, but suddenly it felt full of waiting, full of unsettled business. By 1 a.m, I was wide awake. I stood in front of the window, watching the blinds flicker as the headlights of a car paused outside. I pulled back to the corner of the room, grabbed my phone, and hit record. The engine idled longer than coincidence allows. I whispered to myself, "If you think you can scare me, you picked the wrong woman." I pressed the button to send the video to Evelyn. Her voicemail beeped back. "They're escalating. That's what people do when truth corners them." Calm, collected, yet sister-strong, I muttered, "Then maybe it's time they feel cornered for once." And I meant it. Morning dawned with a quiet resolve. I woke early, pulled the curtains back just slightly, and let the sunlight hit the table. I brewed coffee, black, no sugar. I opened my laptop and printed the files. Medical logs, the will, the voicemail transcript. I stacked the pages, stapled them, lined them up. I pressed my mother's pendant around my neck. It had sat unloved in a drawer for years. The metal warmed. I felt something click inside me. "Proof doesn't tremble," I whispered to the pendant. Now it wouldn't. Later that morning, I drove to the little cafe near the courthouse, one with soft indie music playing low and chairs covered with worn leather. I walked in and saw Lyle already sitting, hands wrapped around a cup of coffee and tapping the spoon like he'd forgotten how to listen. "Darlie wants to end this," he said, without looking up. "Just split it quietly, 50-50, no more court." I tilted my head. "If she wanted peace," I said evenly, "she wouldn't have followed me home last night." He froze. "What are you talking about?" I took a sip of my coffee. Tell her next time she wants to scare me, she should turn off the headlights first. Lyle's pale face told me what I needed to know. The messenger was now me. When he left, I sat back and let the memory creep up on me. It was the night Dad died. Lyle walked in, panic-stricken. The unpaid loan bills lay on the kitchen table like evidence of failure. I covered his debt quietly, without telling Mom, so she wouldn't worry. I whispered to the empty seat now, "I saved you once, never again." My sacrifice was never thank you'd. It was just another ledger entry in their books. I felt the bitterness mix with clarity. This wasn't about money anymore. It was about truth. That evening, I returned home and found the manila envelope on the doormat. No return address. I pulled it inside and peeled it open. Photographs, my mother's hospice bed, my hand holding hers, and on the back of one, in neat cursive, "Still think you deserve it?" It felt like a blindfold tightening around me. I crumpled the photo, then smoothed it out again. "You shouldn't have touched her," I said quietly. Then I sent the images to Evelyn. Secure folder, labeled Intimidation Exhibit A. They had moved from courtroom strategies to private violations. That's when I knew this wasn't law anymore, it was war. Night came again. I sat on the couch, the pendant heavy against my chest. I opened my phone's camera and recorded. If anything happens to me, this isn't random. My name is Shanann Hawthorne. I have evidence. I uploaded the file to the cloud, the little spinning icon signaling freedom through record keeping. I looked around the room at the faint outline of the reserved for family chair in my memories, at the dark corners of a house that once felt safe. "Let's see who survives the storm," I whispered. I didn't cross my arms. I didn't shiver. I sat calm, prepared. The next morning, the car window was shattered. I found the single photograph, the one from hospice, placed on the driver's seat. My reflection stared back at me, surprised and steady. I picked up the photo, tucked it into the glove box, and started the engine. I left the lot as though I were leaving the past behind me, but I knew better. I was driving into its shadow. The sun had barely risen when I stepped outside. Amber lights scattered across the pavement, but the scene wasn't warm. It felt off. My car window was shattered, shards of glass shimmering like frost on the curb. I knelt, pressed my palm against the seat, and pulled out the photo I'd found earlier in the envelope, the one from Mom's hospice bed, the one Darley's team had somehow taken. "They've been inside," I whispered, voice low enough for only the wind to hear. Across the street, a dark SUV idled for several heartbeats before tearing off. I memorized the plate. I texted Evelyn, "Got one. It's time." The message sent, unanswered, for now. My breath fogged in the early morning chill. In that moment, I realized the war had left the courtroom and found my driveway. By the time I got to the station, I'd changed into what I call court day armor, dark cardigan, clean blouse, hair tied back. The officer glanced at the window, then at the photo I handed him. "Any idea who did it?" he asked, pen poised. My reply, "My brother and his wife." He raised an eyebrow. "Are you sure it's not a coincidence?" "Coincidences don't break windows," I said, standing tall. The report was filed, but his sigh said more than his words. Outside, I felt the sting of isolation. No cavalry coming, no instant rescue. If I wanted justice, I'd have to deliver it myself. Back in my apartment, I set the photo flat on my desk, surrounded by Mom's pendant, the will, and a small stack of police reports. Evelyn arrived minutes later, stepped around the rubble of glass, and said quietly, "They're desperate. That's good." "Good?" I repeated. "Desperation makes people sloppy. We'll use this," she said, pulling out her tablet and prepping subpoenas for the hospice's visitor logs and surveillance. I nodded. "If they were there, I'll prove it." Evelyn smiled the faintest flicker of admiration. On her screen, I saw the logs. Darlie's login to the patient database, time-stamped just days before Mom's final hospitalization. Unauthorized access. My jaw set tight. This wasn't just intimidation anymore. It was tampering with her decline. That night, I fell asleep clutching the pendant. I dreamed of Mom on the porch again, twilight glinting through the wood rails. She turned to me and said softly, "If I ever stop recognizing you, promise you'll still recognize yourself." In the dream, I tried to speak but woke with silence instead. My forehead damp with sweat, I realized my fight wasn't reacting to them. It was leading myself out of this trap. Morning came, coffee brewing, light filtering through blinds. I opened my laptop and drafted a formal affidavit. Timestamps, photos, email logs, police reports. I whispered, "You wanted war, then you'll get documentation." My fingers typed steadily as the pendant warmed against my collarbone. On one email, I found the connection. My brother's lawyer, representing the corporate client that funded Darlie's PR campaign. Evelyn's voice crackled through the phone. "You just found the thread that unravels everything." I closed the laptop, steadied my shoulders. Calm fury. Strategy on paper. Later, there was a knock at my door. I paused. Peephole clicked. Lyle alone. Face haggard, eyes rimmed red. He said, "She's gone too far, Shanann. I didn't sign up for this." "Then stop it," was all I said. His laugh sounded hollow. "You don't get it. She's not doing this for money anymore." "What then?" He hesitated. "She wants your name gone. From everything." My heart skipped. I swallowed. "Okay," I replied, voice steady. "Then I give you one chance. Stop it." He turned and left, still looking over his shoulder. He unlocked something. Fear, regret. I wasn't sure, but I felt the shift. That night, a text from an unknown number appeared. "Check your email. Attachment. One line. Your mother deserved better than you." No panic, no tears. I screenshot it, filed it away in a folder labeled Evidence, Phase 1. I closed my laptop and sat quietly on the couch, the pendant heavy at my neck. "Phase 2 starts tomorrow," I said aloud. I wasn't hiding. I was prepared. Because at sunrise, I wasn't just defending what was left. I was building the trap they'd walk right into. 5. The sun had barely risen when I stepped outside. Amber light scattered across the pavement, but the scene wasn't warm. It felt off. My car window was shattered, shards of glass shimmering like frost on the curb. I knelt, pressed my palm against the seat, and pulled out the photo I'd found earlier in the envelope. The one from Mom's hospice bed, the one Darlie's team had somehow taken. "They've been inside," I whispered, voice low enough for only the wind to hear. Across the street, a dark SUV idled for several heartbeats before tearing off. I memorized the plate. I texted Evelyn, "Got one, it's time." The message sent, unanswered, for now. My breath fogged in the early morning chill. In that moment, I realized the war had left the courtroom and found my driveway. By the time I got to the station, I'd changed into what I call court day armor. Dark cardigan, clean blouse, hair tied back. The officer glanced at the window, then at the photo I handed him. "Any idea who did it?" he asked, pen poised. My reply, "My brother and his wife." He raised an eyebrow. "Are you sure it's not a coincidence?" "Coincidences don't break windows," I said, standing tall. The report was filed, but his sigh said more than his words. Outside, I felt the sting of isolation. No cavalry coming, no instant rescue. If I wanted justice, I'd have to deliver it myself. Back in my apartment, I set the photo flat on my desk, surrounded by Mom's pendant, the will, and a small stack of police reports. Evelyn arrived minutes later, stepped around the rubble of glass, and said quietly, "They're desperate. That's good." "Good?" I repeated. Desperation makes people sloppy. We'll use this, she said, pulling out her tablet and prepping subpoenas for the hospice's visitor logs and surveillance. I nodded. If they were there, I'll prove it. Evelyn smiled the faintest flicker of admiration. On her screen, I saw the logs. Darlie's login to the patient database, time-stamped just days before Mom's final hospitalization. Unauthorized access. My jaw set tight. This wasn't just intimidation anymore. It was tampering with her decline. That night, I fell asleep clutching the pendant. I dreamed of Mom on the porch again, twilight glinting through the wood rails. She turned to me and said softly, "If I ever stop recognizing you, promise you'll still recognize yourself." In the dream, I tried to speak, but woke with silence instead. My forehead damp with sweat, I realized my fight wasn't reacting to them. It was leading myself out of this trap. Morning came, coffee brewing, light filtering through blinds. I opened my laptop and drafted a formal affidavit. Timestamps, photos, email logs, police reports. I whispered, "You wanted war, then you'll get documentation." My fingers typed steadily as the pendant warmed against my collarbone. On one email, I found the connection. My brother's lawyer representing the corporate client that funded Darlie's PR campaign. Evelyn's voice crackled through the phone. "You just found the thread that unravels everything." I closed the laptop, steadied my shoulders. Calm fury. Strategy on paper. Later, there was a knock at my door. I paused. Peephole clicked. Lyle alone. Face haggard, eyes rimmed red. He said, "She's gone too far, Shanann. I didn't sign up for this." "Then stop it," was all I said. His laugh sounded hollow. "You don't get it. She's not doing this for money anymore." "What then?" He hesitated. "She wants your name gone. From everything." My heart skipped. I swallowed. "Okay," I replied, voice steady. "Then I give you one chance. Stop it." He turned and left, still looking over his shoulder. He unlocked something. Fear? Regret? I wasn't sure, but I felt the shift. That night, a text from an unknown number appeared. "Check your email." Attachment, one line. "Your mother deserved better than you." No panic, no tears. I screenshot it, filed it away in a folder labeled Evidence, Phase 1. I closed my laptop and sat quietly on the couch, the pendant heavy at my neck. "Phase 2 starts tomorrow," I said aloud. I wasn't hiding. I was prepared. Because at sunrise, I wasn't just defending what was left. I was building the trap they'd walk right into. By morning, the shaking had stopped. Not just in my hands, in my gut, in my voice, in that corner of my mind that used to ask, what if they're right? Now, all that remained was focus. Cold, surgical focus. I sat at my desk and opened a fresh document. Strategic Response. Simple title. I liked things direct now. First item, force transparency. Second, let them think they're winning. Mom's pendant rested beside the keyboard. Her voice echoed softly in the back of my memory. Fight so the truth stays whole. I would. The first move came online. I typed a short message, no embellishment, no emotion. "There's a lot being said lately. I'll let the truth come out where it belongs, in court." I paired it with a quiet photo. Mom's pendant beside my folder marked court documents. No hashtags, no drama, just calm. By noon, the comments rolled in like a tide. Some kind, some cruel, most confused. It was what I wanted. Noise, distraction, visibility. And like clockwork, Darlie fired back with a tweet of her own. "Some people can inherit money but never class." The bait worked. I smiled, not out of triumph, but because I saw the path unfolding exactly as planned. That afternoon, I walked into Darlie's PR firm, Hawthorne Creative, our family name now hung on her wall like she owned it. The receptionist nearly dropped her phone when I walked in. "Tell Darlie I'm here," I said, voice even. When she appeared, her heels clicked like gunshots against the tile. She wore that same smug look, until she saw the envelope in my hand. "What are you doing here?" she snapped. "Returning what's yours." I placed the envelope on the desk. Inside, printed screenshots of her forged hospice letter. Every page stamped, annotated, signed by a certified forensic examiner. "I had it authenticated," I said. "You forged a dying woman's signature." She blinked. Once, twice. "You can't prove I wrote it." "You're right," I said, "but your assistant can." For a moment, her entire face shifted. Not anger, not fear. Panic. I turned without waiting for her to respond. That evening, Evelyn and I met Kara, the assistant, at a diner just off I-45. She looked younger than I remembered, her hands trembling around a cup of lukewarm tea. "She made me type it," she whispered. "Said it was just for her notes." "And then?" I asked. "I saw it printed in the press. I freaked." She slid her phone across the table. On it, dozens of voice memos. Clear as day, Darlie's voice dictating the letter, line by line. The tone, the phrasing, unmistakable. "You did the right thing, Kara," I said gently. "I should have come forward sooner." "You are now, that's what matters." She handed over the phone, along with a folder of printed transcripts. Another brick in the wall I was building. One backed not by revenge, but truth. That night, alone again, I sat, with the evidence, and remembered the last time I'd argued with Mom. She was tired, her eyes clouded by frustration and fatigue. "You always take the long road, Shanann," she'd said. "Because shortcuts hide what people really are," I'd replied. Now, I finally understood the weight of those words. This fight wasn't about money. It never had been. This was about preserving what Mom tried to leave behind. Something clean, something right. Around midnight, my phone rang. Lyle. "She knows," he said, voice barely above a whisper. "About the assistant. She's losing it." "Let her," I replied. "No, listen. She's not thinking straight. You should leave town for a few days. If I run now, she wins twice." There was silence on the other end, then a sigh. "Just be careful, okay?" "I always am," I said, and hung up. Before bed, I placed Mom's pendant next to the folder labeled Phase 2. The screen of my laptop glowed quietly, the documents inside lined up in order. Kara's affidavit, the audio files, the court motion Evelyn drafted that afternoon. I turned off the light. "Tomorrow Truth walks into that courtroom," I said to no one, "and it has my name on it." The courtroom felt colder than it should have for a spring morning. Not in temperature, but in presence, like something heavy had already dropped, and we were all just waiting for the echo to land. I sat still, back straight. Evelyn beside me, flipping through our folder again, though I knew she didn't need to. Lyle was there, 2 rows up, chewing the side of his cheek like it might hold answers. And across the aisle? Darlie's seat was empty. The double doors creaked, and in walked Bailey, Darlie's attorney, holding a thick folder like it was a burden rather than a weapon. He didn't make eye contact with anyone. The judge adjusted his glasses, tapping a pen twice before speaking. "Mr. Bailey, where's your client?" Bailey stood, voice flat. "Your Honor, Mrs. Darlie Hawthorne will not be appearing today. She's cooperating." No gasp, just silence. A silence so thick it felt like the air itself was watching. Evelyn leaned toward me and whispered, "Cooperating means surrendering." Something happened. And just like that, the game had shifted. Bailey walked forward and placed the folder on the judge's desk. The judge opened it slowly, scanning the first few pages with that expression people have when they're already tired of what they're reading. Inside were transcripts of Kara's recordings, printouts of emails between Darlie and a journalist. The same one who smeared my name in that awful op-ed, and records of bank transfers, payments, bribes. Evelyn looked over at me, lips parted but speechless. That didn't happen often. The judge closed the file, set his pen down. "Ms. Hawthorne," he said, his tone suddenly quieter, gentler. "Much of your claim appears substantiated, but we must proceed formally. Due process." I nodded once. "You've been through enough," he added. And maybe it was a small thing, but that acknowledgement, it cracked something open in me I didn't even know was still locked. We recessed for lunch. Outside the courtroom, the hallway buzzed with low conversations and shifting glances. I stepped to the side, needing air, when I heard my name. Shanann. Lyle. He looked like a shell, like someone had finally opened the blinds on the life he'd been hiding in. His voice was thin, his eyes older. "She's gone," he said. "She turned everything over. I didn't know she forged Mom's letter. I swear." I didn't flinch. I didn't nod. I just looked at him. "You chose her over the truth," I said. "That's a kind of blindness, too." His shoulders sagged. "Can we fix it?" "No," I said softly. "But you can stop making it worse." He blinked a few times, then looked down. "I signed the affidavit she gave me. Didn't even read it. Thought it was just legal stuff. Turns out, I backed her lies. You helped her bury Mom's voice." He didn't argue. He just walked away. Later, stepping out into the sun, I was met with the soft clicking of cameras. Journalists gathered near the steps, eyes alert. One stepped forward. "Ms. Hawthorne, do you have a comment about your sister-in-law's arrest?" I paused, taking a breath so steady it almost surprised me. "All I'll say is this," I began. "Grief should never be weaponized. My mother raised us better than that." That was enough. I walked past them, the weight of the morning trailing behind like dust off my heels. By evening, I was back home. The sun had dipped low, casting orange streaks through the blinds. I sat at my desk and opened the will, the real one. The paper still held Mom's scent. Her handwriting was steady, confident. Like her. Next to it, I placed the cracked photo they'd left in my car and the pendant that had followed me through this entire storm. The items together told a truth no courtroom could fully hold. "You stayed," I whispered, repeating her words. And so did I. The tears came quietly this time. No shaking, no fury, just release. Around 9, there was a knock. When I opened the door, Evelyn stood there, holding a small brown box. "This came from the courthouse," she said. Inside was the family photo, the original one, restored and reframed. On the back, written in blue ink, were 6 words for the one who stayed. "Case dismissed with prejudice." I closed my eyes and let that settle in my bones. "That's one chapter closed," I said. Evelyn gave a small nod. "And the next?" "It's time to decide what staying means when no one else does." She left a few minutes later. I locked the door behind her, turned off the lights, and was about to head to bed when I saw it. A letter. Slid under the door, barely noticeable against the hardwood. No return address, no stamp. Just 4 words, written in a hand I knew too well. "We're not done yet." The envelope sat like it had weight, but it was just paper. 4 words, no return address, nothing fancy. "We're not done yet." I didn't need to analyze the letters. I'd seen that slant all my life. The curl on the W, the way he pressed too hard on the downstrokes. It was Lyle. My breath caught, not from fear, but from the ache I wasn't ready to admit was still there. After everything, the courtroom, the evidence, Darley's arrest, here he was, still trying to hold on to something. I stared at that envelope on the floor longer than I should have, before picking it up like it might burn me. Then I dialed Evelyn. "He left a letter," I said. There was a pause. "Darley?" "No," Lyle. Another pause. What does it say? Just 4 words. We're not done yet. She sighed. Don't panic. If he tries anything now, it'll only bury him deeper. That's the thing, I said, stepping toward the window. I don't think he cares anymore. The street was quiet. No strange cars, no dark SUVs, just the ordinary hum of a city that had already moved on. But I hadn't. Not yet. At 11:30, another knock. I moved slow this time, no sudden panic. Just tired. I checked the peephole. Lyle. He looked thinner, worn. His hair wasn't combed, and the collar of his shirt was damp. Maybe rain, maybe sweat, maybe both. I opened the door halfway. You really think this is how you fix things? You think this is over? His voice cracked like old wood under pressure. It never should have started. You humiliated us, Shanann. No, I said, stepping closer to the frame. I told the truth. There's a difference. His hand slammed against the doorframe. His shoulders trembled. Tears streaked down his cheeks, messy, uncontrolled. I lost everything because of her, he choked, and because of you. You lost it because you chose lies over family. He shook his head, shoulders slumping. She's gone. Darlie turned herself in, said I planned it all, every bit of it. I stared at him. She gave you up? I asked. Cut a deal. He sniffed. She told them I masterminded it. The letters, the bribes, the hospice records. Did you? His eyes met mine. No fire this time, just the flat truth. I didn't stop her. That's enough, isn't it? I didn't answer. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a flash drive. No envelope, no explanation. Everything's on this. Emails, money transfers, messages. I'm done running. I took it without a word. His fingers lingered for half a second before he stepped back. You were the only one who never lied, he said quietly, even when it ruined you. Then he walked away, down the hall, past the elevator, out of sight. By morning, Evelyn was already at my kitchen table, coffee in one hand, the flash drive in the other. Let's see what the ghost left behind, she muttered, plugging it into my laptop. The screen lit up, hundreds of files, organized, labeled, voice memos, scanned documents, text message screenshots, emails from Darlie, directing edits to hospice statements, bank transfers to the journalist who'd smeared my name, consent forms with Lyle's signature, instructions to forge documents. Evelyn clicked through like a surgeon. He didn't orchestrate this, she said. She did, but he let her. Then a folder caught my eye, named simply Mom. I opened it. Inside were Eleanor's patient files, altered notes, a false statement inserted days before her final stay, subtly implying she'd changed her will in favor of Darlie. The timestamp had been manipulated. Metadata showed the edits had come from Darlie's IP address. I pushed my chair back. She violated her, I said, breath shallow. Not just legally, she tampered with my mother's dignity. Evelyn looked at me but didn't speak. What could she say? That afternoon, we drove in silence to the courthouse annex. The hearing room was small, bare, just a few benches, a clerk, and Darlie. She sat in cuffs, wrists pale against the steel, her hair tied back, lips tight. That smirk still tried to live on her face, but it wasn't quite full anymore. Not today. When her eyes met mine, I didn't flinch. I walked straight to the clerk's desk and set the flash drive down. Full record, I said. You'll find it all there. Darlie's gaze sharpened. You think this makes you the hero? She snapped. No, I said, but I finally stopped being your victim. For the first time, her expression changed. The mask slipped. Her mouth opened slightly. Not fear, not yet, but uncertainty. The beginning of it. I'm not afraid of you anymore, I added, and you're going to be remembered for exactly who you are. I turned and walked out without looking back. Outside, the air felt different. Not lighter, just real, like breathing without flinching. As we reached the car, I paused and touched the pendant resting beneath my collar. In my mind, I heard Mom again. "If I stop recognizing you, promise you'll still recognize yourself." "I do," I whispered. "I finally do." That night, I stood by the window. The city stretched wide. Endless apartments, offices, families, strangers. I felt both small and whole. I opened my laptop, typed a final message to Evelyn. Subject, done, taking time off. Galveston sounds right. Then, one by one, I deleted the folders. Legal, evidence. Phase 1, Phase 2, all of it. Only one folder remained, momswords.txt. I opened it and added the final line. Some battles aren't about winning. They're about ending what should have ended years ago. I leaned back, about to close the laptop, when a new email appeared. No name, no subject, just one line. "You don't know everything." The salty breeze hit me before I even reached the porch. Galveston hadn't changed, not in the ways that mattered. The house still leaned slightly to the left, and the porch still let out that tired groan every time I stepped on it. I paused just inside the doorway, closing my eyes and letting the scent of cedar and old wood settle in my lungs. For the first time in what felt like years, I exhaled without effort. I dropped my bag in the hallway and walked through the living room slowly, touching the tops of furniture like I needed to reintroduce myself. The same shell wind chime Mom hung in the kitchen window still clinked faintly in the breeze. The quiet wasn't empty, it was full. The kind that wraps around you instead of pressing down. Later that night, I unpacked my laptop, sat at the little dining table, and clicked open the email I hadn't dared touch since it arrived. Subject, "You don't know everything." No signature, no sender I recognized, just one line in the body. "There's another will." I froze. Attached was a PDF. I opened it cautiously, handwritten, dated 2 months before Mom died, notarized, legal, but it didn't divide everything between me and Lyle. Half of her estate was designated to a hospice care foundation under my administration. I stared at it for a long time, reading the words over and over. No anger, no shock. Just a soft, tired smile rising at the corners of my mouth. "Of course you did," I whispered. "You always found a way to turn pain into something useful." The next morning, I drove to Houston, back to the courthouse, but this time not for defense or revenge, just clarity. Inside the records office, I handed the new will across the counter. The clerk blinked as she read it. "You're voluntarily surrendering part of the estate?" "I'm not surrendering anything," I said. "I'm honoring what was hers, what should have always been." Evelyn, standing beside me, leaned in and raised an eyebrow. "You sure?" "This isn't a loss," I told her. "It's balance." Back at the house that evening, the air was thick with summer haze. I made myself coffee and stepped onto the porch, settling into the chair Mom used to favor. The boards beneath my feet creaked the same way they had when we'd sit together out here, cups in hand, watching shrimp boats drift in. "You think love means holding on," she'd once told me, watching the horizon. "Doesn't it?" I'd asked, younger then. Still certain life was about clutching what mattered. She shook her head. "Sometimes it means letting go, so others can breathe." Now, years later, I watched the boats again, the same path across the same waters, and I whispered back, "I finally understand." A week passed before the letter came, postmarked from the correctional facility. Lyle's handwriting was rough, unsteady. "I don't expect forgiveness, just wanted you to know. I told them everything. They're reopening Darlie's charges. She might not get out again. You were right. The long road's the only one that lasts." No apology, no excuses. But it didn't sting like it used to. I folded the letter and placed it beside the pendant Mom had worn. Both would stay in that old cedar box on the mantel. Reminders of pain, yes, but also the proof of surviving it. Months passed. Life didn't roar back in. It came gently. I threw myself into building the foundation Mom had envisioned. We named it Eleanor's Light. The first event was modest, held in the church's community room. Plastic chairs, homemade cookies, soft piano in the background. But the people came. Families, nurses, folks who knew what it meant to lose someone slowly, who understood grief that lingers even after the casseroles stop showing up. When I stepped up to the podium, I had to steady myself on the edge. My mother believed healing didn't end at goodbye, I said, eyes scanning the room. This foundation is her way of saying goodbye, and thank you to every one of you who never stopped showing up. There was no thunder of applause, just warm, sustained clapping. And for the first time, I didn't need louder than that. That night, I returned home, slipped off my shoes, and made my way to the porch. The moon was high, painting the sea in silver. I curled my fingers around the pendant again, the metal warm from my skin. My phone buzzed. A text from Evelyn. "Press cleared your name. Full statement goes out tomorrow." I typed back, "Good, but that's not why I did it." Then I put the phone face down and leaned back. The wind came in soft waves, and beneath it, I could almost hear Mom again, humming something under her breath, a song without words, just feeling. "They had no idea who I'd become," I said aloud to the night, "and maybe neither did I." The porch light above me flickered, twice. A familiar rhythm, the same way Mom used to do when she wanted me to come home safe.